I always thought I was normal, just a regular guy living a regular life. But boy, was I wrong. It all started on a Tuesday. Nothing special about Tuesdays, right? Wrong again. I woke up feeling weird. Not sick weird, but off weird. Like when you put your shirt on backwards and don't notice until lunchtime. That kind of weird. I got out of bed and stubbed my toe on the dresser. Ouch. But here's the thing. It didn't hurt. Not even a little bit. I looked down at my foot, expecting to see a bruise or maybe some blood. Nothing. It looked fine. I poked it. Still nothing. That's when I first thought, something's not right here. I went to the bathroom to splash some water on my face. Maybe I was still dreaming. But when I looked in the mirror, I got the shock of my life. My reflection wasn't moving with me. It was a second behind, like a laggy video call. I waved my hand. A second later, my reflection waved back. I jumped. My reflection jumped after I landed. This wasn't normal. This wasn't possible. Or was it? I ran out of the bathroom, heart pounding. The world around me seemed to shimmer like heat waves on a hot day. But it wasn't hot. It was the middle of winter. I pinched myself hard. Nothing. No pain, no red mark. Just nothing. That's when I heard a voice. Not from outside, not from another room. It was in my head. Subject 7329, simulation unstable. Recalibration required. I froze. Subject? Simulation? Recalibration? What was going on? I felt like I was in a sci-fi movie, but this was real. Too real, and too scary. I needed to get out of the house. Maybe some fresh air would clear my head. I grabbed my coat and opened the front door. But instead of my quiet suburban street, I saw a blank white space. No houses, no trees, no sky. Just white, stretching as far as I could see. I slammed the door shut, breathing hard. This couldn't be happening. I must be going crazy. That had to be it, right? But deep down I knew. This was real. Too real. I went to the kitchen and turned on the TV. Maybe the news would tell me what was going on. But every channel was the same. A man in a suit staring straight at the camera, saying the same thing over and over. They have been lying to you. The world is a simulation. I turned off the TV, my hands shaking. This was too much. I needed help. I picked up my phone to call my mom. But when I dialed her number, a robotic voice answered. Error. Contact not found in simulation. That's when it hit me. Everything I knew, everyone I loved, my whole life, it was all fake, a lie, a simulation. But why? Who was doing this? And more importantly, how could I escape? I sat down on the kitchen floor, my mind racing. If this was a simulation, there had to be a way out, a glitch, a back door, something. I just had to find it. But where do you even start when your whole reality is falling apart? I got up and walked to the window. The view outside was normal again. Houses, trees, a guy walking his dog. But now I knew the truth. It wasn't real. None of it was real. I touched the window, half expecting my hand to go right through it. It didn't. The glass was solid, cold, real. Or at least it felt real. But I knew better now. Feelings could be faked. Everything could be faked. I turned away from the window and looked around my house. Everything seemed normal. But now, with my new knowledge, I saw it differently. The family photos on the wall, were those memories even real? The books on the shelf, had I actually read them, or were those fake memories too? I walked to my bedroom and opened my closet. My clothes were there, neatly hung up. I reached out to touch them, but my hand passed right through. I gasped and pulled back. What was happening? I tried again, this time with a different shirt. My hand touched fabric. Solid, real fabric. I grabbed the shirt and pulled it out. It came easily, like a normal shirt, but when I let go, it disappeared, vanished into thin air. My heart was racing now. This was crazy, impossible, but it was happening. To me, right now. I had to figure out what was going on. I had to find answers. I went back to the living room and turned on my computer. Maybe I could find something online. But as soon as I opened the browser, the screen went black. Then, words started appearing as if someone was typing them in real time. Hello, subject 7329. We see you've noticed some irregularities in your simulation. Don't be alarmed. This is all part of the process. Please remain calm and await further instructions." I stared at the screen, my mouth hanging open. They knew. Whoever they were, they knew I had figured it out. And they were watching me. Right now. I slammed the laptop shut and backed away from it. My mind was spinning. What did they mean by process? What were they going to do to me? I needed to get out, to run, to hide. But where could I go in a world that wasn't real? How could I escape from a simulation? I ran to the front door and yanked it open. This time, my street was there, normal, quiet. I stepped outside, half expecting the ground to disappear beneath my feet. It didn't. Everything seemed solid, real, but I knew better now. I couldn't trust my senses anymore. I couldn't trust anything. As I stood on my front porch, looking out at the world I once thought was real, I realized something terrifying. The nightmare was just beginning. I took a deep breath and stepped off my porch. The concrete felt solid under my feet, but I couldn't shake the feeling that it might disappear at any moment. I looked around, trying to spot anything out of place. The houses, the cars, the trees. Everything looked normal. Too normal. I started walking down the street, not sure where I was going. I just knew I had to move, to do something. As I walked, I noticed something strange. The people I passed, my neighbors, folks I'd known for years, they didn't seem to see me. Their eyes slid right past me as if I wasn't there. "Hey, Mrs. Johnson," I called out to my elderly neighbor who was watering her flowers. She didn't even blink. It was like I was invisible. I waved my hand in front of her face. Nothing. I tried to touch her shoulder, but my hand went right through. A chill ran down my spine. Was I the glitch in the system now? I ran down the street, panic rising in my chest. I needed to find someone, anyone who could see me, who could help me make sense of this madness. But everywhere I went, it was the same. People going about their day, completely oblivious to my presence. I ended up at the local park, out of breath and scared out of my mind. I sat down on a bench, trying to calm down and think. That's when I noticed him. A man in a black suit standing perfectly still under a tree, staring right at me. My heart skipped a beat. He could see me. I stood up, ready to run to him, to beg for answers. But as I took a step forward, he raised his hand. Suddenly, everything around me froze. The birds stopped mid-flight. The leaves hung suspended in the air. Even the clouds stood still. The man in the suit walked towards me, his footsteps echoing in the eerie silence. As he got closer, I realized his face was blank. No eyes, no nose, no mouth. Just smooth, featureless skin. "Subject 7329, he said, though I couldn't see how without a mouth. "You've become aware. This complicates things." "Who are you?" I asked, my voice shaking. "What's going on?" "I am the administrator," he replied. "And you, Subject 7329, are experiencing a system malfunction. Your simulation was not supposed to glitch like this." "Simulation? So it's true? None of this is real?" I gestured around at the frozen world. "Real is a subjective term," the administrator said. "This reality is as real as you believe it to be, or at least it was supposed to be." My mind was reeling. But why? Why put me in a simulation? The administrator tilted his head, a eerily human gesture on his blank face. "That's classified information, Subject 7329. All you need to know is that we'll be resetting your simulation shortly. You'll go back to your normal life with no memory of this incident." "No!" I shouted. "I don't want to forget. I want answers." I lunged at the administrator, but my hands passed right through him. He flickered like a bad TV signal, then solidified again. "That was unwise, Subject 7329, he said, his voice colder now. "We've invested too much in you to let you disrupt the system. It's time for your reset." He raised his hand again, and the world around us started to dissolve. The trees, the benches, the frozen people, all of it melted away like ice cream on a hot day. Soon we were standing in a white void, just like I'd seen outside my front door earlier. "Wait," I pleaded. "At least tell me why. Why me? Why this simulation?" The administrator was silent for a moment. Then, to my surprise, he chuckled. It was a hollow, metallic sound that sent shivers down my spine. "Why you?" he said. "Oh, subject 7329. You still don't get it, do you? It's not just you, it's everyone, the whole world. Reality as you know it, it's all a simulation." My mind struggled to comprehend this. But why? Who's behind this? "Ah, now that's the real question, isn't it?" the administrator said. "But I'm afraid you're not cleared for that information. In fact, you're not cleared for any of this. Time to wake up, subject 7329, sweet dreams." He snapped his fingers and suddenly everything went black. I jolted awake in my bed, covered in sweat. My heart was racing and my mind was a jumble of fading images and words. Something about a simulation? A man with no face? But the more I tried to hold on to these thoughts, the quicker they slipped away. I shook my head, trying to clear it. Just a dream, I told myself. A weird, vivid dream. I got out of bed, ready to start my day. But as I walked to the bathroom, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I looked in the mirror, half expecting to see something strange, but it was just me, same as always. I splashed some water on my face, trying to wake up fully. As I dried off, I noticed something on my wrist. A small mark, almost like a barcode. I blinked and it was gone. Must have been a trick of the light, I thought. But deep down, a small voice whispered, or was it? I tried to push these thoughts away as I got ready for work. Everything was normal. Everything was fine. But as I left my house and looked up at the sky, I couldn't help but wonder, is any of this real? And if it's not, what is? The questions lingered in my mind as I walked down the street, the world around me suddenly seeming both familiar and alien at the same time. I had the strangest feeling that my day was about to get a whole lot weirder. And I was right. As I turned the corner, I saw something that made me stop in my tracks. There, in the middle of the road, was a glitch. A literal glitch like you'd see in a video game. A part of the street was flickering, shifting between pavement and something else. Something that looked a lot like computer code. I rubbed my eyes, sure I must be seeing things. But when I looked again, it was still there, and it was growing. "Hey!" I called out to a woman walking her dog nearby. "Do you see that?" She turned to me, confused. "See what?" I pointed at the glitch. "That! In the road!" She looked where I was pointing, then back at me, concern on her face. "Are you feeling okay? There's nothing there." But there was. I could see it clear as day. The glitch was spreading, consuming more of the street. And as I watched, horrified, I saw something else. Something coming through the glitch. It was a hand. A human hand, reaching out from the flickering code, grasping at the air, then an arm, a shoulder, and finally, a head. A man pulled himself out of the glitch, gasping as if he'd been underwater. He looked around wildly, his eyes finally landing on me. "You," he said, pointing at me. "You can see me, can't you? You can see the truth." I nodded, unable to speak. The woman with the dog was long gone, oblivious to the impossible scene unfolding in front of me. The man stumbled towards me, his eyes wide and desperate. "We don't have much time," he said. "They'll realize I've broken through soon. Listen carefully. Everything you think you know is a lie. The world, your life, all of it. It's a prison, designed to keep us docile, to keep us from realizing our true potential." "Who are you?" I managed to ask. "What are you talking about?" "I'm like you," he said. "Someone who woke up, someone who saw through the lie, but I found a way out. And now, I'm here to wake others up, to start the revolution." Before I could respond, I heard a sound. A high-pitched whine, like feedback from a microphone. The man heard it too, and panic flashed across his face. "They're coming," he said. "I have to go, but remember, the simulation isn't perfect. There are glitches, cracks in the system. Look for them, use them. And whatever you do, don't let them make you forget again." With that, he turned and dove back into the glitch in the road. In an instant, both he and the glitch vanished, leaving me standing alone on a perfectly normal street. I stood there, my mind reeling. What had I just seen? What did it mean? And most importantly, what was I going to do about it? As I tried to process everything, I noticed something out of the corner of my eye, a flicker just for a second in a nearby window. I turned to look, but it was gone. Then I saw another in a parked car's mirror, and another in a puddle on the ground. Slowly, I realized the truth. The man was right. There were glitches everywhere. Small, almost unnoticeable, but they were there. And now that I had seen them, I couldn't unsee them. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I knew I had to do. I couldn't ignore this. I couldn't go back to my normal life, pretending everything was fine. I had to find out the truth. I had to wake others up. I had to start the revolution. As I walked down the street, my eyes darting from glitch to glitch, I felt a mix of fear and excitement. I didn't know what challenges lay ahead, what dangers I might face, but I knew one thing for certain: nothing would ever be the same again. I spent the rest of the day in a daze, walking around the city, my eyes peeled for more glitches. They were everywhere once I knew what to look for. A tree that flickered for a split second, showing binary code beneath its bark. A car that glitched through a stop sign as if it wasn't there. Even people, their faces occasionally pixelating like a bad video stream. As the sun began to set, I realized I had no idea what to do next. I couldn't go home. What if they were waiting for me there? I couldn't talk to anyone about this. They'd think I was crazy. Or worse, they might be part of the simulation, programmed to stop people like me who had woken up. I ended up in a small diner on the outskirts of town. It was nearly empty, just a couple of truckers at the counter and a bored-looking waitress wiping down tables. I slid into a booth in the corner, ordering a coffee just to have a reason to stay. As I sat there, my mind racing, I noticed something odd about the salt shaker on my table. The label seemed to be changing, flickering between salt and strings of code. I blinked hard, sure I must be imagining things, but when I looked again, I saw something else. Hidden in the strings of code was a message: "Wake up, meet us, midnight, abandoned factory on Elm." My heart started pounding. Was this a message from other awake people? Or was it a trap set by the simulation controllers? I glanced around the diner, wondering if anyone else had noticed. But the truckers were engrossed in their meals, and the waitress was now scrolling through her phone. I was the only one who could see it. I spent the next few hours in that booth, nursing my coffee and debating what to do. On one hand, going to meet strangers at midnight in an abandoned factory sounded like the beginning of a horror movie. On the other hand, I needed answers. And if there were others out there like me, people who knew the truth about the simulation, I had to find them. As the clock ticked closer to midnight, I made my decision. I left some money on the table and slipped out of the diner. The streets were mostly empty as I in here way across town to Elm Street. I found the old factory easily enough, a looming dark shape against the night sky. I hesitated at the rusted gate, my heart pounding in my chest. This was my last chance to turn back, to try and forget everything I'd seen and go back to my normal life. But I knew I couldn't do that. I needed to know the truth. I pushed open the gate and stepped into the factory grounds. The place was eerily quiet, the only sound the crunch of gravel under my feet. As I approached the main building, I saw a faint light coming from one of the ground floor windows. Taking a deep breath, I pushed open the door and stepped inside. The interior was dark, filled with the shadowy shapes of old machinery. But there, in the center of the room, was a circle of light, and in that circle stood a group of people. They turned to look at me as I entered, their faces a mix of caution and hope. An older man with gray hair stepped forward. "Welcome," he said. "We've been waiting for you." I looked around at the group. There were about a dozen of them, men and women of various ages. They all had the same look in their eyes, a mix of fear and determination that I recognized from my own reflection. "Who are you?" I asked. "What is all this?" The gray-haired man smiled. "We're like you, people who have seen through the lie, people who want the truth. My name is Dr. Alan Turing. At least, that's the name I was given in this simulation. We don't know if our identities here reflect who we really are, out there." I felt a chill run down my spine. "Out there? You mean outside the simulation?" A woman stepped forward. She had short red hair and piercing green eyes. "Exactly," she said. "We don't know much about the real world, but we know it exists. And we know that this," she gestured around her, is not it. But why? I asked. Why put us in a simulation, and who's behind it? Dr. Turing shook his head. We don't know for certain, but we have theories. Some of us believe we're part of some grand experiment. Others think this might be a form of imprisonment. And a few, he paused, glancing at the others, a few think this might be a way to protect us. Protect us? I echoed. From what? From the truth, the red-haired woman said. Maybe the real world is so horrific, so unlivable, that this simulation is meant to be a kindness, a way to give us some semblance of a normal life. I felt my head spinning. This was all too much. So what do we do? I asked. How do we get out? Dr. Turing smiled sadly. That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? We've been trying to find a way out for years. We can manipulate the simulation to some degree. That's how we were able to send you the message. But breaking out entirely? We haven't managed that yet. But we're close, another man spoke up. He was younger with dark skin and intense eyes. I'm Marcus. I used to be a programmer, in here at least. I've been working on a code that I think might be able to crash the whole system. If it works, it could free everyone at once. And if it doesn't work? I asked. Marcus shrugged. Best case, nothing happens. Worst case, we could all be deleted, wiped from existence. I felt a chill run down my spine. The stakes were higher than I could have imagined. So what now? I asked. What do you want from me? Dr. Turing put a hand on my shoulder. We want you to join us. Help us figure this out. Help us free everyone. I looked around at the group, these strangers who were now my allies in the strangest fight imaginable. I thought about my life, my job, my friends and family. Were any of them real? Did it matter? I'm in, I said. Where do we start? The group smiled, relief evident on their faces. Dr. Turing nodded approvingly. We start, he said, by showing you how deep the rabbit hole really goes. He turned and walked towards a door at the back of the room. The others followed, and after a moment's hesitation, so did I. As we walked, the factory around us began to change. The walls flickered and faded, revealing a high-tech laboratory underneath. Welcome, Dr. Turing said, to our real base of operations. As I stepped into the lab, my mind reeling from everything I'd learned, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The world as I knew it was a lie, and I was now part of a secret rebellion to uncover the truth. Whatever came next, I knew one thing for certain. Nothing would ever be the same again. And somewhere in the real world, our true captors were watching, waiting. The game was on, and the stakes were nothing less than our very existence. The lab was unlike anything I had ever seen. Sleek machines hummed softly, their screens displaying complex codes and diagrams I couldn't begin to understand. Holographic projections floated in the air, showing what looked like maps of our simulated world, complete with glowing points that I guessed represented glitches or weak spots. This is amazing, I breathed, turning in a slow circle to take it all in. How did you build all this? Marcus grinned. We didn't build it, we hacked it. This lab exists within the simulation, but it's hidden from the controllers. We've been using their own technology against them. Dr. Turing led me to a large central console. This is where we monitor the simulation, he explained. We can track glitches, communicate with other awakened individuals, and work on our escape plans. The red-haired woman, who introduced herself as Sarah, pointed to a pulsing red dot on one of the screens. That's a new glitch that just appeared. We think the simulation is becoming increasingly unstable. That's good for us, but it also means we're running out of time. Out of time? I asked. What happens if we run out of time? The group exchanged grim looks. It was Marcus who finally spoke. We think the controllers might be planning a reset, a complete reboot of the entire simulation. If that happens, we'll all be wiped clean. Everything we've learned, everything we've done, it'll all be erased. I felt a chill run down my spine. How long do we have? Dr. Turing shook his head. We're not sure. Could be days, could be hours. That's why we need to act fast. He turned to the group. It's time. We need to initiate Project Orpheus. The others nodded solemnly. I looked around, confused. Project Orpheus? What's that? Sarah turned to me. It's our last resort, a virus we've created that could potentially crash the entire simulation. If it works, it could free everyone at once. And if it doesn't work? I asked, though I feared I already knew the answer. Then we could all cease to exist, Marcus said quietly. But at this point, it's a risk we have to take. Dr. Turing placed a hand on my shoulder. We understand if this is too much for you. You've only just learned the truth. If you want to walk away, now's the time. I thought about it. I thought about my life, my job, my friends and family. Were any of them real? And even if they weren't, did I have the right to make this decision for them? To potentially erase them from existence? But then I thought about the truth, about living in a world that was a lie, about being controlled, manipulated, kept in the dark, and I knew I couldn't walk away. I'm in, I said firmly. What do you need me to do? The relief on their faces was palpable. Dr. Turing nodded approvingly. We need you to be our carrier, he said. The virus needs to be uploaded at multiple points in the simulation simultaneously. You're the only one they're not tracking yet. Sarah handed me what looked like a simple USB drive. This contains the virus. You'll need to plug it into specific terminals around the city. We've marked the locations on this map. She handed me a small device that looked like a smartphone, but with a much more complex interface. Be careful, Marcus warned. Once you start uploading the virus, they'll know something's wrong. They'll come after you. Who are they? I asked. The controllers? Dr. Turing's face darkened. We call them the architects. They're the ones who built this simulation, who keep us trapped here. We don't know much about them, but we do know they'll do anything to keep their system running. I pocketed the USB drive and the map device, trying to ignore the trembling in my hands. How will I know if it's working? You'll know, Sarah said grimly. Once the virus starts spreading, the glitches will become more frequent, more noticeable. Reality itself will start to break down. And what about you guys? I asked. What will you be doing? We'll be monitoring your progress from here, Dr. Turing explained. We'll try to run interference, keep the architects off your trail for as long as we can. But ultimately, the success of this mission depends on you. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. This was it. No turning back now. Okay, I said. I'm ready. The others gathered around me. One by one, they shook my hand or patted my shoulder, wishing me luck. As I turned to leave, Dr. Turing called out one last time. Remember, he said, his eyes intense. No matter what you see, no matter what happens, don't let them make you forget. The world is a lie, but you know the truth now. Hold on to that no matter what. I nodded, then turned and walked out of the lab. As I stepped back into the abandoned factory, I saw it flicker, revealing the high-tech facility underneath for just a moment before the illusion reasserted itself. I made my way out onto the dark, quiet streets. The city looked the same as it always had, but now I saw it with new eyes. Every shadow could be hiding an agent. Every passerby could be an architect in disguise. I pulled out the map device and looked at the first location. It was in the heart of downtown, in a busy public square. Taking a deep breath, I started walking. As I moved through the sleeping city, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Cameras seemed to turn to follow me as I passed. Streetlights flickered ominously. Once, I could have sworn I saw a man in a black suit watching me from a darkened doorway, but when I looked again, he was gone. I reached the first upload point just as the sun was beginning to rise. It was a public information kiosk, the kind tourists use to get maps and city information. I approached it casually, trying to look like a lost early morning jogger. As I pretended to study the map on the kiosk's screen, I quietly slipped the USB drive into a port on the side. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the screen flickered, lines of code flashing across it too fast for me to read. A moment later, it was over. The screen returned to normal, showing no sign of what had just happened. But as I turned away, I noticed something strange. A nearby tree seemed to be glitching. Its leaves were flickering in and out of existence, revealing a wireframe structure underneath. It was working. The virus was spreading. I quickly made my way to the next location, my heart pounding. I had 4 more upload points to go, 4 more chances to be caught. As I hurried through the awakening city, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. Whatever happened next, whether we succeeded or failed, the world would never be the same. And somewhere, in the real world beyond this simulation, our true captors were surely beginning to realize that their perfect prison was no longer quite so perfect. The game was on, and the stakes were nothing less than our very existence. As I approached the second upload point, I steeled myself for whatever might come next. After all, in a world where nothing was real, anything was possible. And I was about to find out just how deep the rabbit hole really went. The second upload point was in a busy subway station. As I descended the stairs, I could feel the air getting thicker, heavier. The underground space seemed to pulse with an unseen energy, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was walking into a trap. The station was crowded with early morning commuters, all of them going about their routines, oblivious to the truth of their reality. As I weaved through the crowd, I couldn't help but wonder, were any of these people real? Or were they all just parts of the program, designed to keep the illusion going? I spotted the upload point, an electronic ticket machine, and made my way towards it. Just as I was about to reach it, I felt a hand on my shoulder. My heart leapt into my throat as I spun around, expecting to see an architect or one of their agents. Instead, I found myself face to face with an old woman. She looked at me with eyes that seemed too sharp, too knowing. "Be careful, dear," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "They're watching." Before I could respond, she melted back into the crowd, leaving me stunned. Was she one of us? An awakened individual trying to warn me? Or was she something else entirely? I shook off my confusion and turned back to the ticket machine. I had a job to do. Pretending to buy a ticket, I slipped the USB drive into a port on the side of the machine. Just like before, the screen flickered for a moment, then returned to normal. But this time, the effects were more dramatic. The lights in the station began to flicker erratically. The electronic displays showing train times glitched out, displaying strings of random characters. And for a split second, I could have sworn I saw the entire crowd of people flicker, revealing a sea of wireframe figures before the illusion reasserted itself. Panic began to spread through the station. People looked around in confusion, some crying out in alarm. I knew I had to get out of there fast. As I rushed towards the exit, I heard a sound that made my blood run cold. A voice speaking from every speaker in the station. "Attention! This is a system-wide alert. An unauthorized program has been detected. All citizens are advised to remain calm and await further instructions. This is not a drill." The voice was calm, almost soothing, but there was something off about it, something inhuman. I knew then that the architects were onto us. The race was truly on now. I burst out of the subway station into the morning sunlight. The city around me was in chaos. Traffic lights were malfunctioning, causing gridlock. Electronic billboards were displaying random patterns of static and code. And everywhere I looked, I could see more and more glitches in the fabric of reality. My map device beeped, reminding me that I still had 3 more upload points to go. I set off at a run, knowing that time was running out. The third upload point was in a public library. As I approached, I saw something that made me stop in my tracks. A group of men in black suits were standing outside, their eyes hidden behind dark sunglasses. They were scanning the crowd, clearly looking for someone, looking for me. I ducked into an alley, my heart pounding. How was I going to get past them? As I leaned against the wall trying to catch my breath, I felt something strange. The bricks under my hand seemed to shift, to soften. I looked down and gasped. My hand was sinking into the wall as if it were made of putty. For a moment I panicked. Then I remembered what Dr. Turing had said. The world is a lie. Taking a deep breath, I focused all my will on the wall. If this world wasn't real, if it was all just a simulation, then maybe, just maybe. I stepped forward and passed right through the wall. For a moment I found myself in a strange, in-between place. Lines of code flowed all around me, forming and reforming into shapes I could barely comprehend. Then, with a jolt, I was inside the library. I staggered, overwhelmed by what had just happened. but there was no time to dwell on it. I quickly found the library's main computer and uploaded the virus. This time, the effects were immediate and dramatic. Books began to fly off the shelves, their pages rearranging themselves in mid-air. The library patrons flickered like bad holograms, some of them disappearing entirely. And then I heard it. A sound like reality itself was tearing apart. A great yawning chasm opened up in the middle of the library, revealing a swirling vortex of code and fractured images. I ran, barely making it out of the library before the entire building seemed to fold in on itself, disappearing into the vortex. The city was in full panic now. People were running through the streets, screaming as the world around them began to break down. Cars were floating off the ground, defying gravity. Buildings were shifting and changing shape, and everywhere cracks were appearing in the sky, revealing the true nature of our simulated reality. My map device showed 2 more upload points, but as I looked at it, the screen began to distort. A new message appeared. Change of plans. Central upload point activated. Proceed there immediately. I recognized Dr. Turing's ID code next to the message. Something must have changed. Maybe the virus was working faster than they'd anticipated. The map showed the central upload point was at the top of the city's tallest skyscraper. As I looked up at it, I saw the building was flickering, sometimes appearing as a sleek tower, sometimes as a massive pillar of pulsing code. I started towards it, but my path was suddenly blocked. A group of people stood in front of me, but there was something wrong with them. Their faces were blank, featureless. When they spoke, it was with one voice, the same calm, inhuman voice I'd heard in the subway. "Subject 7329, they said in unison. "You have violated the terms of your reality contract. Cease your activities immediately and prepare for system reset." The architects. They'd found me. I turned to run, but found myself surrounded. The featureless figures were closing in from all sides. I looked around desperately for an escape route, but everywhere I turned, reality itself seemed to be breaking down. As the architects reached for me, I closed my eyes and focused with all my might on the top of the skyscraper. If I could pass through a wall, maybe, just maybe. I felt a lurching sensation, like my entire body was being pulled apart and put back together. When I opened my eyes, I found myself on the roof of the skyscraper, wind whipping around me. In the center of the roof was a strange device pulsing with energy. This had to be the central upload point. As I stumbled towards it, I saw the city spread out below me. It was a nightmare landscape of broken physics and fractured reality. I reached the device and pulled out the USB drive. This was it, the final upload. Whatever happened next would determine the fate of everyone trapped in this false reality. As I raised the drive towards the upload port, I hesitated for a moment. What if this was a mistake? What if the real world was worse than this one? What if we were destroying the only reality we had? But then I remembered everything I'd seen, everything I'd learned. This world was a lie, a prison. Whatever the truth was, we deserved to know it. I took a deep breath and plugged in the drive. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a sound like a million voices screaming at once, the world began to tear itself apart. The sky shattered like glass, revealing an endless void of swirling code. The city below began to break apart, buildings and streets and people all dissolving into streams of data. I felt myself beginning to break apart too, my body dissolving into pixels and code. But I wasn't afraid. Somehow, I knew this was just the beginning. As the last vestiges of the simulated world faded away, I had one final thought. We're free. And now, we're going to find out what's really out there. Then, everything went white.